Malinowski was looking at Trobriand life to find clues about how all societies worked. His observations led him to the conclusion that all aspects of social life were actually designed to serve basic human needs, such things as food, shelter and reproduction. Serving those needs was the function of every social act and institution. And this way of looking at things became known as functionalism.
The functional method recognizes, perhaps above all, that the satisfaction of biological needs implies and develops a system of derivative requirements. Man, living under conditions of culture, obtains his bread indirectly through cooperation and exchange. He has to procure it in complicated economic pursuits. Culture, therefore, creates new requirements for implements, weapons, and means of transport, for social cooperation, for institutions which ensure an ordinary and lawful working of human groups, and which allow of organized cooperation.
Malinowski was not so interested in how things had evolved, a problem that had obsessed so many of his predecessors. He believed that what was important was to look at how society actually worked at the time it was being observed by the anthropologist.
Take marriage, for example. The older anthropology was focusing on what was the origin of marriage, what was the evolutionary relationship between marriage by capture and marriage by purchase and marriage by exchange, you see. Was there such a thing as group marriage? Was there such a thing as primitive communism in women, you see? And Malinowski said, in essence, don't talk nonsense, about this. Let us focus on what is here and now. Let us explore the biological aspects of marriage, the legal aspects, the economic aspects, the aspects of relation of social groups and kinship, the symbolic aspects. And so he, all the time, this was a plea for further and further exploration.
Any aspect of social life could be approached using the key question, what does it actually do in society? For example, Malinowski found one particular thing permeated most parts of Trobriand life: magic.
Magic. The very word seems to reveal a world of mysterious and unexpected possibilities. Partly because we hope to find in it the quintessence of primitive man's longings and of his wisdom, and that, whatever it might be, is worth knowing. Partly because magic seems to stir up in everyone some hidden mental forces, some lingering hopes in the miraculous, some dormant beliefs in man's mysterious possibilities.
The fact that the Trobrianders resorted to magic intrigued Malinowski, mainly because the events which provoked magical behaviour were those at which they were really expert. There were magical rites for each stage of the gardening year, magic for fishing. There was even love magic. There was a magical accompaniment for almost everything. But Malinowski wondered why they needed magic spells and rites to accompany technical procedures at which they were so expert. For example, the Trobrianders were, and still are, proficient gardeners. Their livelihood depends on the yam crop, and individual status also comes into play with the distribution and display of food at harvest time. In fact, there's a lot at stake in the gardening year. Magic is seen as necessary for the favourable outcome of the garden crops and to exert a control on the weather. Magic is so much a frame of mind for the islanders that even an economics graduate like Jerome, who will one day be paramount chief of the Trobriands, thinks of magic in a way that Malinowski would recognise.
Magic is like your fertilizer. So our fertilizer is magic to make our crops grow very well.
And you don't see any conflict in learning spells and about herbs? It doesn't conflict with your idea of science at all?
No, not at all. Two different things altogether.
Science is founded on the conviction that experience, effort, and reason are valid. Magic on the belief that hope cannot fail, nor desire deceive. The theories of knowledge are dictated by logic. Those of magic by the association of ideas under the influence of desire.
Malinowski was now tackling fieldwork in a more sophisticated way than even he realized at the time. Every day as he wrote up his notes, he began to paint a picture of native life that was very different from that portrayed by his predecessors. It was more complete. How did he manage this? Just what was it about his own approach that made his work so much better than that done by previous anthropologists? People like Rivers, for example. Well, for a start, he spent a long time in one place. He was out here in the Trobriands for just under 2 years, and for most of that time he was in close contact with the natives. But the real breakthrough, though, came because he communicated with these people in their own language. He was a very able linguist, and there's no doubt that he spoke Kirwinian, the local language, with great fluency.
Popoka laboy, popoka ubiu, popoka ubiu kastai. Besem na kay bigato nam tonle lukum tosina kastai umno, pela la kokim kawan, nene. Bigato na sige sa kasetom maya bogo misi, makalo wasay na bogo lolos. Most be a special washing qualities, we got on in qualities like a picket tower. A shout. And that's a guinea in them too. They were a cow of the They were the bono, they were the bono. A bishop of cow, we should be the war. And Bishop Tontori.
In his letters, Malinowski noted with amusement how the islanders reacted to his anthropological pursuits. He wrote to his fiancée, Elsie Masson,
By the way, I was known before as Nasauna Amarakana, the man from Amarakana. Now I hear myself announced by the term Tolilabogwo, the man of the old talk. Or to put it nicely, the master of the myth. There is, of course, no reverence associated with this designation. Indeed, it implies rather something like that chap who is dotty and on the point of old man's talk.
This style of fieldwork, speaking the language fluently, living with the community, keeping detailed daily notebooks, came to be called participant observation. It was tough and demanding work, and it was also intensely lonely. We know this from the letters that Malinowski wrote and from the personal diaries that he kept when he was out here in the Trobriands.
I well remember the long visits I paid to the villages during the first weeks, the feeling of hopelessness and despair, after many obstinate but futile attempts had entirely failed to bring me into real touch with the natives, or supply me with any material. I had periods of despondency, when I buried myself in the reading of novels, as a man might take to drink in a fit of tropical depression and boredom.
These diaries make fascinating reading. They tell of the rigors of fieldwork, of the doubts, the achievements, the failures, and the irritations. But they also show that he took time off to relax with a rather interesting group of expatriates who lived out here at the time. Among them, the pearl trader, the doctor, and local magistrate, and the merchant. It's clear from the diaries that his friends provided more than just a social refuge, for they too had important insights into the workings of Trobriand life. Ironically, it was the missionary to these islands, not Malinowski's favourite species of colonial, who had recorded an important ceremonial activity that was at the source of Malinowski's fame as an anthropologist. The Trobrianders call it the cooler.
Early in 1915, in the village of Decoyas, I heard conch shells blowing. There was a general commotion in the village. and I saw the presentation of a large necklace. I of course inquired about the meaning of the custom, and was told that it is one of the exchanges of presents made when visiting friends. At that time, I had no inkling that I had been a witness of a detailed manifestation of what I subsequently found out was cual.
Malinowski soon realized that this exchange, called cual, involved no ordinary presents and was between rather special friends. So much of what you can observe of native life seems boring and dull, just because you don't initially know what on earth is going on. And to begin with, Malinowski was in the same position.
Impressionistically, it makes you feel that you're at an enormous fair or garden party. This latter is even for me a better comparison, because a typically English garden party seems to me always entirely pointless and inherently tedious, quite as much as the cual. I can understand from the outside why people indulge in one, but subjectively, I could find happiness and joy in neither.
It didn't take him long, however, to realize that the cual was at the center of Trobriand life. Cual means to go, and reflects the fact that these exchange ceremonies were the final act in a vast tribal enterprise which involved elaborate and dangerous expeditions.
Each cual expedition is launched with the aim of returning back with a particular set of valuables. Either arm shells called muali like this, which has just come back from Catawba, or necklaces like this called sulava. To us as outsiders, they're just rather strange pieces of native jewellery. But for the Trobrianders, it's more than their appearance that matters. For these people, these objects are venerated. They each have a personal history and a name and a renown of their own. These valuables can't be bought or sold. They have a worth that isn't estimable in simple monetary terms. They are, in fact, rather special items of exchange, and they're at a centre of a ritual that involves a whole ring of islands out here in the Western Pacific, of which the Trobriands are just a part.
The cual is carried on by communities inhabiting a wide ring of islands, which form a closed circuit. Along this route, articles of two kinds, and these two kinds only, are constantly travelling in opposite directions. In the direction of the hands of a clock, moves constantly long necklaces of red shell called sulava. In the opposite direction, move bracelets of white shell called muali. Each of these articles, as it travels in its own direction on the closed circuit, meets on its way articles of the other class, and is constantly being exchanged for them. Every movement of the cual articles, every detail of the transactions, is fixed and regulated by a set of traditional rules and conventions.
The cual is still at the centre of Trobriand life and requires months of preparation. It all starts with the building of a special cual canoe.
Gala bitawa puasi, gala bita sekibuna, gala kula taiga. Rabesa makas. Kaula bita makana ga guyau. Ikaw ba ge bunela makala ba peniti, guyau pela wala mali pela gua bakabe. Pela mtana gwadi la meya, gala yegu wala mtaka kilibila kumoda na makala. Kana batata imawaga, baluke ga kana agubu wabikau, kana agumweya, kana biya ikoa, bimiyake.
Expeditions leave today just as they did when Malinowski stayed on these islands. There's a special magic for each stage of the cooler. Here it's performed to forestall any disasters that might happen on the journey. The rites go on today exactly as they did when Malinowski recorded them. The aim of each cooler expedition is to return with one or more of the venerated objects, and the focus of each trip is the handing over of the actual necklace or arm shell. Each voyager is heading for the village of his cooler partner, where he will wait around as a rather special guest until he is reluctantly given the object of his anticipation. He will hide any sign of excitement or gratitude, as he will one day have to reciprocate with a valuable of equivalent worth when his partner calls on him.
It is rather like a game of chess or some such game. Your object as a player is to possess, if only for a short time, one of these named highly valuable objects, which are either necklaces which are going around that way or arm shells which are going around that way. And there are still, even today, some named arm shells and necklaces which Malinowski actually mentions in his book, which are still circulating.
The cooler also provides an opportunity for trade in other objects, mostly the sorts of things you can't get at home. It's a time for keeping up old friendships and maintaining contact with neighbours who very often have different languages and cultures. It's an enterprise in which the whole community have taken part, and the folk back home eagerly await evidence of the expedition's success. What was the bargaining like? How many arm shells or necklaces are there? Are there any famous ones? All the trophies are carried triumphantly from the shore across the island, in this case to the chief's village. A famous named object that has been circulating since mythological time arouses a strong desire for possession. But what do you do with these priceless objects once you've seduced one from your appointed partner? Most people have to offer them to their chiefs.
Famous necklace or arm shell, then I will have to pass it to Waibari. If I kept it, it means I'm challenging him. Famous objects usually goes to top chiefs. So he's the chief. If I kept it, that means I'm challenging him. Because that necklace or the arm shell is very famous. And it should belong to the
What happened
chiefs.
if you held on to it?
Waibari would poison.
He'd poison you. Is that through magic or by direct poison?
By magic.
Magic is still a fundamental part of Trobriand life, and the chief is expected to be a leading exponent. The paramount chief today is Waibari, a conspicuously successful magician. He is held responsible for any fortune or misfortune that befalls his people. With this responsibility goes the honour of receiving the best spoils of any cooler expedition that he sponsors.
Besa kina mo mala kota kuya ka mo li bitote gubar. Pela buko sina kili la bile gas buragala. Bisawa li sela bisawa li gbaki oba. Bala bakau sina ka mo sana no pela buragagu bila kumodo na bitay na bitapa. Pela ka mo li bo. Mako. Sina ko
Kuule päivä. Bestuttaa mala. Kuule pela kamkoa. Kyllä mitä sakalla pitää galavi joda galawa kataga bogo. Mutta ne tässä kivägu. Ei vuota luaibi mala vejo da partner. Besakela kaula komodo. Galabi tagi mala galabi tamap. Sakala pela talasya. Tos nomti bogo me bestut. Besotulu buda hasala lu besia ele bestu.